Hello, I am James Green of Lucas Solar, and the subject of this webinar or little seminar is heat loss. And I describe it as so boring and so expensive, but I also give you the remedies. And because it is boring, I've tried to make it mildly entertaining. And what we actually are looking to do is to save you a lot of money. And I'm going to go to a number of screens to assist. Heat loss can be very boring and very expensive. And heat loss from geysers is genuinely just money going up in flames. It's just terrifying. And when you see what I'm going to explain to you, you'll agree. So some years ago, Eskom did an analysis of where they thought domestic consumption was, and you can see they've got the geyser at 39%. I think actually it's rather higher than that. In middle to upper income homes, it's between 35% and 60% of the monthly bill. But the really terrifying figure is that up to 25% of your overall geyser consumption can be heat loss. And that is in addition to the 39%. So I thought we might have a cup of coffee, but the purpose of the illustration is to show you a cup of very good espresso coffee in an insulated cup. And by insulated, of course, the coffee will stay hot far longer than in an uninsulated cup. And if you have a geyser, and it is more than a couple of years old, it will be what is called a Class E geyser. And the standing loss on that Class E geyser is defined as 2.59 kilowatt hours in 24 hours. And I will explain that in a second. What I want to point out to you here, if you follow my mouse, is the extraordinarily bad insulation around the outside of part of the geyser. So there's lots up here and here, but almost none down here at all. Absolutely staggering. A new geyser, Class B, which basically came in September 2019, has a standing loss of 1.36 kilowatt hours. It's effectively a 50% improvement in the heat loss, which was sustained by the old ones. And it's done so by getting rather fatter, something which I'm trying to avoid. And it's got 50 millimeters, approximately, of polyurethane insulation the whole way around it. And that does achieve greater heat loss. Heat loss, basically, is looking at the amount of energy that is lost from the geyser. And the way that they do it, although I think it's not very representative of real life, is they put a geyser in a room with concrete walls, floor, and ceiling, and they have a sustained temperature of 20 degrees Celsius, air temperature. And they turn off the geyser at 60 degrees or 65 degrees, and they measure the temperature of the water after 24 hours. And using the specific heat of water formulas, they can determine how much electricity has actually been lost by just having that geyser sitting in that room at 20 degrees. The trouble is that's not very representative of real life. Most geysers are in roofs and it gets a lot colder. So here is an interesting, and to me anyway, temperature chart of ambient high and low temperatures in Johannesburg throughout the year. And the temperature where they do the heat loss test is done at 20 degrees Celsius. And here are the nighttime temperatures, or the low points during the month. So at this time of year, where I'm making this recording around May, it's down to 4.1 degrees Celsius. And then in the daytime, it's 16. It's not even getting close to the 20. So the reality is 20 degrees Celsius at a constant temperature is rather unrealistic. And if we look at it in winter at night, these temperatures may get down to 4.1 or 0. And essentially the whole year at night we're below the 20-degree temperature. And the night is very nearly 50% of the day. I mean, certainly 10 hours. So what does that actually mean? Heat loss. On a 200-litre geyser, if you were going to heat it from cold to hot at an average day, from 16 to 60 degrees, it would be around 10.23 kilowatt hours of electricity to heat that tank once, with no heat loss. In winter, because your temperatures are a little bit colder, they're down to around 11 degrees rather than 16, that figure will increase to around 11.6. Then we add in heat loss, and in the winter, it's just huge, and you'll see it in the slide in a second. And we could estimate that it's another 50 to 75%. In other words, another 7 kilowatt hours, or an extra 200 kilowatt hours per month in the winter months. And that is around 500 Rand per month in the winter months this year. Terrible, in 2020. And that is just going up in flames, just in smoke. So what are the best remedies? What are your options? You can insulate the hot and cold pipes for 2 meters. You can fit a geyser blanket. You can fit an UberTrack controller a little bit here, and you can go solar. Now I want to spend a little bit of time on this one. So this is an example of an UberTrack controller, and it was done on May the 28th, 2020, very recently. And the air temperature down here was very cold last night. It was down to about, 3.2 degrees. You can see it's very, very cold. And at 7 o'clock last night, they'd finished showering, and they made sure that the electricity didn't turn on, and the heat loss of the temperature that was in the water, which was about 30 degrees, fell a little overnight. And it came back on at 5:30 when they turned on the electricity to guarantee that they had water when they showered at about 6:30. So what they did was they saved electricity by not heating the air at night. They let it get cold, and they could have let it get even colder. But really what they're doing is that if you had your normal element going on and off at night, you would have been heating the geyser up, letting it cool down, heat up, cool down, heat up, cool down, just wasting money. So the other options is that a geyser blanket will save you theoretically up to 20% of the standing loss of a Class E geyser and 10% of a Class B geyser. But in the illustration shown, it's actually not very good, because where you actually lose most of the heat is in the first 2 meters of pipe either side. If they're sitting out in the cold air, they will suck the heat out of the geyser. A geyser timer on a distribution board will save you the electricity from heat loss if you have the geyser going on and off at night. So that is a cheap, good investment. You can buy one at a number of hardware stores, including Builders Warehouse, for about 300 Rand. If you go out and get one, just make sure you do get one which is for a geyser. It needs to be 20 amps. So your options are, if you've got no money, it's a shower in cold water, which frankly I think is unacceptable, and this Emperor Penguin seems to think the same, getting out of the water pretty quickly. Realistically, you can turn off your electric element at night, particularly in winter. You can buy a time clock and turn it on and off, and particularly remember off again in winter at night. The best option is to go solar, stop wasting money on electricity, and to fit an UberTrack. So your next steps are to get a quote, call us, chat on WhatsApp, visit our website, email us at UberSolar, and be informed by watching more educational videos. And with that, I'd like to say thank you. I know it's a boring subject, but you can actually see that we're talking about money here, and we're talking about a substantial amount of money just going up in smoke, which is completely unnecessary. And if you understand it, you can save it. So thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you in our next video. Goodbye.